Record. Okay, great. Is it recording on your end?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Oh yeah, because you set up the meeting.
Yeah, I see that I was organizer.
Yeah, okay. So let me get my screen shared here again. Okay, and what we have here is the board. So I'm just going to start over and explain everything that we started with. So the first question that we talked about was what are the different boards that some teams are using? And the one that product uses is this one here, which is the milestone tracking board. We renamed this during the meeting because it had a confusing name. It was something like stretch, deliverable, NPR, and we couldn't figure out what NPR stood for. So what this board is just basically all of the build track labels all in a row that all the teams use. So all the way up through canary, staging, production. Some teams are using some of these, some teams are not. That's fine. They're all here just in case they are. And the way that the planning process works. Oh, and the other reason that we use this this board is that as opposed to something else is that some teams have boards where there's people all in the row here. But for product managers, that's not super useful because we don't bucket things into people and then track them to be delivered in that way. And actually, I think that's actually sort of contributing to one of the problems that we're having is that all of the stack ranking here and all of this is in priority order just becomes scrambled and like, you know, the top 5 get assigned to one person and the next 5. And so you run into problems where you're thinking about people instead of the most important things to deliver on. So that's why product doesn't use one that's people oriented.
Another thing you mentioned that there is no validation issues here, right? There is no validation track.
Yes, there's also no validation track issues here, which is separate and doesn't happen really as part of the milestones. But the build track obviously aligns to releases and tracks towards milestones and has kickoffs and everything like that. So that's why all of that's here. But there is some planning here, which I'll show you in a moment. And then the other thing that some teams do is they make a board where the milestone and the label is already baked in. So you don't have those filters here, which is fine. For me, it's annoying because I don't want to create, you know, dozens of unique boards and have to remake them again every single time there's a new release. So what I have here is I can just choose the milestone, I can choose the team, or I can choose a stage, and I can see it all at once, and it's flexible. It doesn't change, you know, priority ordering as long as I'm just using these two, because the priority is on a per group basis. So as long as I'm using a group label, then the priority order is always fine. I'm not like restructuring them into, again, a people-oriented or some other label-oriented structure. Yeah, so that's the context there why I personally have this board. And then the way that planning works today is that on the, we have that timeline, we have the timeline where we're tracking towards the 4th. And on the 4th, product management has to have a draft of all of the issues here completed. And UX participates in that to a certain extent. But what that means is that there's a plan here that's understandable and somebody could read and look at, and it's not just, hey, we should do something about something, and nobody really knows what we're talking about. It should be more clear. It should have a proposal. It should have something pretty specific that we're doing. It should fit within a single milestone and be as small as possible, but still deliver value to a user.
All of these issues that are in open, they're coming from some of them are I see come from the PM, some of them are coming from this like security bots or something. So
these aren't necessarily the source, but the different labels have a lot of different meanings. These are security issues. So these are ones that that are out there that we're tracking and planning on fixing. This is a major feature. And yeah, these come from a lot of different places, but mostly they come through product management, and product management is the DRI for this list. So even the ones that say security, I'm the one who put them here. Okay. So after the 4th, we've got a draft of all of these issues, and this is where engineering gets involved. Engineering is responsible for looking at these items and saying, yes, this really is, you know, under 1 milestone's worth of work. It's going to fit in the release. And we have capacity on the team to do this work. So they'll pull things into the deliverable column and keep the stack rank so that, you know, the top items are still at the top. And what, so they'll just continue going through, pulling items in until they get somewhere down here and they say, okay, the team is now full. We don't have any more capacity. We've taken in as many items as we can. The rest don't fit. Product will now look at everything that was left over here and say, oh, you know, look, there was this one item that I really wanted included. Can we swap it with this? That generally doesn't come up because we have the stack rank. And but sometimes there's like a little thing that we move back and forth, which is fine. But then product will also say, okay, you know, none of this other stuff made it. So I'm going to move it out back to the backlog, or I'm going to move it to another release, or whatever. Product will do product management to determine what the priorities are and when we could do this instead. At that point is when we also have the kickoff. So once this deliverable column is filled out, product knows what's now in the release. So we can have a kickoff meeting and we can tell customers this is what we think is probably going to be in the release. So that's that moment. So if you imagine, instead of everything being in the open column here, everything is now in the deliverable column. And so the engineering team has assigned all these things out, and the people working on them pull them through the rest of this flow that we see here until ultimately they make it to production. We also have a Kanban process that we're talking about potentially doing, which would change this very, very slightly. We would still have the exact same thing where we go through the open issues, move them to deliverable, have the kickoff. But then at this point, instead of everybody simultaneously starting everything and scrambling the order of what the priorities were, we try not to use stretch now, and we will probably definitely never use it in the future. So I'm just going to hide that one. But what will happen is that we'll have everything here in this deliverable column. And instead of, like I said, starting everything in here simultaneously and hoping that it all finishes at the end, what we'll do is have the product manager move the top 5, 10, whatever like the team decides items into this workflow scheduling column. Those will be the ones that are available to start. So engineering then can decide, you know, how much work they want to have in progress, and per their own work limit, pull things from this column, and then product will keep replenishing this one. So it makes this a little simpler in terms of what's actually next in terms of starting. Darby also had a thought potentially about adding sizing somewhere in this. So like engineering would go through and, you know, I guess it would have to be somewhere between these two. But I actually don't know exactly what's being proposed there, but whatever engineering wants to do is totally fine. They want to add sizing at some point in order to know how much they're working on, which makes sense. It can help with planning as well. And I think that that's it. That's the main change, is that instead of starting everything simultaneously here, we will only start the kind of, depending on how you want to put it, like the maximum that we feel can be in progress without getting to a point where we get to the end of the release and everything is just still in progress.
Right. Yeah, I guess it's more, we'll also can bring a little bit more focus on like what's currently working on, maybe some speedy help needed on moving sooner items to the done and beginning with another one. I guess that's a common practice.
Yeah, there's some cases, you know, where like there's a separate problem that's not fixed by this, where you can wait for weeks and maybe even months in some cases for like a reviewer to come along and review the change. Having a developer just stop and wait for that is pointless. So at that point, they would probably pick up another item. Yeah, I don't know. We sort of have to fix the review process so that we just don't have that problem. But in the meantime, that's probably reality.
Gotcha. What are we doing with the blocked items? Are we assigning that actively to a person who can unblock us, or it's up to team to have a look and see if they can help?
It depends on what's blocking it. Often, so all of these I've looked at, and as product manager, as we head towards the milestone, I'm looking at these and seeing how I can unblock them. I think all of these have an issue that's being delivered in 12.5. That as long as that finishes and ships, I can unblock all of these simultaneously on that day. But yeah, right now I'm monitoring these and trying to push them forward.
Okay. Yeah, that's super clear.
Right?
Um, yeah. Let me. Should I stop this one, right?
Yeah, might as well stop recording now.